Photography is a visual medium. It's common to associate it with its artistic cousin, painting. Naturalistic landscape illustration was the dominant style during the 19th century. Most landscape photographers took their cue from the painters. They recorded vistas that were sweeping, lush, and beautiful. Artistic tradition combined with the conception of the Wild West to create an American photographic motif, the frontier.
And certainly America during the 17th, 18th, and 19th century was built to a large extent on the sense of the limitless possibilities of a wide and expanding frontier that gave the inhabitant a sense of purpose and a sense of place and a pride in this new country and in this new land.
From 1860 to 1885, American photography engaged in an era of exploration. Photographers recorded the West's grandeur with an attitude that matched society's confidence.
There was also a time period when people were thinking about manifest destiny. You know, God gave us this land to do with what we want, or it's our national destiny.
Individual photographers like Edward Muybridge and Carlton E. Watkins struck out on their own to discover the frontier's glories. Other photographers participated in 4 national surveys to document the Western landscape.
Many of the photographs that were made at this time were commissioned by the U.S. Geological Survey to really see what the potential was for land use.
A government eager to expand its boundaries discovered the power of photography.
These photographs were real estate photographs. It was a way that the government could lure Americans to move westward.
Timothy O'Sullivan, William Henry Jackson, A.J. Russell, J.K. Hillers, and William Bell were among the first to expose the mysteries of the West.
I think one of the most important purposes of the photographer on the Western surveys was really propaganda. And it was much easier to convince Congress that they should reappropriate money the next year when they were given great photographs from the year before.
Hundreds of photographs were taken of the frontier states, from the dunes of California to the geysers of Wyoming. But while the photographs looked simple, taking them wasn't.
In many cases, the photographs were made close to what was at that time a 19th century road. You know, these guys weren't dummies. I mean, they were carrying these 11 by 14 or 20 by 24 inch plate cameras around with darkrooms. And they were hauling it around with horses or wagons, and they had to be pretty close to the highway too. And they weren't going to carry that camera 3 miles into the wilderness.
These grand images stirred the imaginations of the people living in the crowded cities of the East. Survey photographer William Henry Jackson took a highly influential picture.
One of his most important images, for example, was the Mountain of the Holy Cross. And he'd photographed that image at a time when people were looking for a kind of symbol of national destiny. The story behind the Mountain of the Holy Cross picture was, hadn't an old trapper or an Indian somewhere seen a cross of snow in the mountain range, but nobody had ever really been able to identify it. Nobody had been able to see this thing. And he went out with the Hayden expedition in 1873, and that was one of their goals, was to find this Mountain of the Holy Cross.
The logs and rocks were all white with frost, and the foliage was heavy with rain of the night before. In passing through the thickets of willows and alders, we were showered with water which soon soaked us completely. After fording the creek 2 or 3 times, we'd had enough of it and made for higher looking. I continued on over the great masses of broken rock, eager to reach the point that would determine the success or failure of our efforts. Clouds began to gather, and as they drifted about among the peaks, the top of the mountain was covered, except for occasional rifts and breaks. Pressing on steadily, I finally gained the summit of the ridge, and working along its crest, at last stood face to face with the Holy Cross in all its sublime impressiveness. William Henry Jackson, 1873.
And there it was, the shining cross in the snow. It was a perfect symbol that God has given us this place, and our destiny is for greatness.
There's no question that Muybridge's work, but also particularly the work of O'Sullivan with the Western surveys and Jackson and Watkins, were the pivotal elements that helped Americans understand the potential and the possibility and the kind of heroic landscape of the West.
These magnificent images propelled the Western migration of the late 1800s.
Clearly, their work was significant in the Congress adopting the whole sense of a national park system, of understanding that it was important for future generations.
The Western landscape photographers pulled back America's geographic veil at a time of national expansion. But there were forces that would direct the country's attention away from the frontier.